Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Today, our guest is Tasso Roumeliotis. He is the CEO and founder of Numa, which was recently selected by American Express as a small business solutions partner and by Google as a launch partner for Google's business messages integration. Before NumberAI, Tasso founded Location Labs. It was an early pioneer in mobile and location-based technology. He built it to 200 plus people and eventually sold Location Labs for $220 million with only $19 million of primary capital invested. He has an MBA from Harvard Business School and a Bachelor of Commerce from McGill University in Montreal. Tasso, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Lance, and great pronunciation of my name.
Yeah.
Usually I have to rehearse that, but you got it right the first time.
Well, what you don't know is I rehearsed it a little bit beforehand with your assistant, who's also on the call, kind of is listening in. So thank you. It's not an easy one, but man, what a cool name. Before we kind of get into things, if you could tell the audience a little bit more about yourself. How did you get into the tech field, and then what led you to found Numa?
Well, so I think my entire life has been about entrepreneurship. I grew up in a family. My parents were immigrants from Greece, and they had to be entrepreneurs just to survive. And so that's the only life I knew, including working, every day, weekends. I think my parents went 8 years without taking only kind of like half day off for Christmas while they were running their business. So, that was kind of the only life that I knew. My dream was always to start a business, and I started my career at places like Bain & Company. And then after business school, I said, look, I've got the requisite skill set to start a business. I said, I want to do something that's going to really kind of take advantage of new things that are happening in the world, which obviously happen to be technology for the most part. And at my first startup was very much focused on location. And this was kind of, think about early 2000s, before the iPhone and the Android came out. We knew because of these mandates that the government put on the cell phone companies that there was GPS and location in all these phones. And it was just being used for you to dial, when you dial 911 on your phone, for them to know where you are and come and get you in case of emergency. And we viewed that as being kind of an underutilization. There's monster hidden asset value in that. So that's what really excited me, the combination of starting a business and taking a new technology with humongous applications, which we've kind of subsequently have come to all experience with apps like Uber that allow you to take the GPS on your phone and do amazing things with it. So that was kind of, I think what really excites me is new, interesting technologies that we know are going to change society and how society uses and interacts with the technology. Location is one, and that was my first company. And then with Numa, what we saw with my team, and we all got back together, it was the band got back together, if you will, for Numa, is that, what we noticed was that if you look at places where where consumers are, communicating with business in new ways. And that was actually, our inspiration was very much China. The company in China that manages interactions with people, there's no Facebook in China, there's a company called WeChat. And WeChat is how you communicate with not just your friends, like a Facebook Messenger or a WhatsApp or an iMessage here, but it's also how businesses communicate. And it turns out when you talk to people, and this is just very much, so many things in business are common sense. I mean, nobody really likes calling a business and waiting on hold and dealing with a grumpy person who's trying to seat someone at a restaurant. At a restaurant. Those aren't positive interactions. And in fact, our human brain, we have this cognitive load that's required every time we interact with the human. And the brain is the largest energy consuming organ of your body. And we're looking for shortcuts. And what we determined is that, we'd much rather message a business or digitally interact with them rather than having to call them. And that was the genesis of what Numa started as. So initially we went to these businesses and we said, we went to a variety of businesses from spas and salons to florist shops to restaurants. And we said, hey, how about we message enable your business? And they said, that's like nice and all, but I don't have a messaging problem. I'm not like, there's not a gazillion messages coming in that I can't respond to. That's not my issue. But they said, I still have my phone and people still call me. I just don't pick it up more than 50% of the time. And it turns out the statistics show that almost 70% of phone calls into small businesses, and that's like, everyone from plumbers to restaurants to spas to, dentist office and doctor's offices and, real estate leasing agents who are missing customers. Everyone's missing customers. And because people are still reaching out on phone, that is still a way people do things. He said, can you help me with that? We said, okay. So this is where the evolution where, in kind of startup tech terms, you talk about things like product market fit, where we went in with one solution and came out the other end with something that was more useful to them, that had true product market fit. And that's answering their phones and text messaging customers back and rescuing them. So that's kind of how, we got started, how I got started in terms of kind of the new company, but also the old one as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was very well put. What is one benefit of using text with a fixed cost with no impact on profit margins?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest impact of this solution on profit margin is very, very clear. The return on investment is very clear for retailers, for people who buy the service, and that's, you are missing more than 50% of the customers that are calling you. Okay. So if I'm calling a leasing agent to look at an apartment and you don't pick up the phone, well, then I'm going to call the next property. I'm calling a restaurant for lunch and you don't pick up the phone, I'm going to call the next sandwich place. It's all lost revenue, lost margin. So the first thing we do is we actually process your order. I'll give you the scenario of a restaurant. Okay. If I'm calling on the phone and you don't pick up the phone, I've lost that customer. So what we do is, one thing is we'll text that customer back. We'll say, if you want to order food, just text order, and we process it all from there. That order gets taken via text. So you don't have to have somebody manually enter it into a tablet or write it down or however else they do it. It gets digitally entered into their order system. The ticket gets printed at the counter, in the kitchen. The order gets paid for in the POS system without any human interaction. So not only have you rescued the customer and processed the order and send them a text message letting them know when it's ready, and also tell us where you are, we'll bring it to your car curbside, all digitally without human interaction. I mean, the curbside person needs to bring it to them, but other than that, so you rescue the order, and then if you think about it, the cost savings for you as a business, if you have to have somebody actually pick up the phone and figure out and manually enter all that information, is also kind of a cost component. So it's two aspects. One is you're increasing revenue. The other is you're actually decreasing the cost. A lot of our customers have stopped answering their phone and are funneling all interactions that have this commercial intent to buy something into a platform which allows them to automate it. So you don't have the human person. Keep in mind, humans are as wonderful as creatures as we are expensive and we make errors. People underestimate the error aspect of it. You're talking about a 95% success rate, which means 5% of the time there's errors in the order, which costs customers dissatisfaction, refunds, poor reviews on Yelp, and all that kind of stuff. So it's a double hit on the profit margin.
I'm going to go off on a little tangent here because you bring up a really interesting point without you even knowing it, I think, and that is what you just described is you're automating a lot of the sequence, right? And it's sort of, then you talked about humans and sort of how well they make errors. There's going to be less errors involved. So with that automation process. And maybe you could just touch on the subject of, something like Andrew Yang, who was running for president earlier last year, and then or earlier this year. For anybody who has the fear of this, as we're moving towards more artificial intelligence solutions like this, that can process things and take out the human aspect of it. Should people be afraid of this, or should people embrace it fully? And why should they, if they should embrace it fully?
Obviously kind of a big debate around this. I think there's a few things. Number one is over the course of history, Ludditism has always been a failed philosophy. The same thing applies to self-driving cars. They talk about the largest profession for men in the country of the United States are drivers, truck drivers, taxi drivers. You can't stop technological progress. You'll fall behind. I mean, if you don't let these things evolve and thrive in our country, countries like Singapore will just step up and say, thank you very much, and we'll eat everybody's lunch around the world. So progress, we're in kind of this global system where if you're not running as fast or faster than other countries, you'll be left behind and you'll end up, being a failed state. So that's kind of overall my view of these things. I think, just like we saw, and I'm like the 1,000th person that's been mentioning these things, but when they talked about anytime you have new technologies, there's a whole bunch of new jobs that come up. Okay, so we used to have horses, and then when cars came, we needed mechanics, we needed people to work in manufacturing facilities. It was just different kinds of jobs. When electricity came, and all of a sudden we had refrigerators and other televisions that that plugged into the walls, a whole bunch of new products that required people to build them and design them and all of those things. The internet brought like web designers. So any new technology always brings about new kinds of jobs. Now, I think the big question here that that a more Luddite, leaning person will say is that the jobs are very much information technology and development related. So, like most people, if you were a truck driver, you're not going to be a computer programmer. But the truth of the matter is, if you look at the world moving into a software-focused, software-eating-the-world, there are plenty of jobs, and I'm never in a software company, for folks that, for things like, there are services like customer success, where you don't need to be a programmer, but you need to have a very kind of, a human touch, where that's required to help get your customers to see what the product is doing, and that's valuable. So I think there's a whole bunch of jobs new jobs that are going to merge, that are going to be very high value, that are going to take into account the humanity of it. I mean, that is still a missing thing that the AI is very, very far off away from ever being able to solve. And so I think there's just going to be new jobs that are developed. So I don't think, I think it is a crime to stop progress. Yes. In society. You will fall behind. We see the world of failed states that have taken wrong policies, policies that constrict growth and constrict meritocratic success of their populace.
Yeah, I would agree fully. I'm actually really excited about automating, even if it's the smallest things in life. One of the apps I use is Calendly. It has saved me time. It has saved my customers coordination efforts. It's consolidated the thing. It's taken the human error out of that. Yeah, I'm not of the Luddite opinion either. I hope that states get out of the way, and then we see the experiment happen where governments that don't get out of the way and the governments that try to stifle this stuff and literally do a crime like you're saying, prove that the market really should be allowed to work, within reasonable bounds, right? I mean, and obviously there can be things in the market that don't always work out, but it usually does shift itself away from those things. What are some ways that you see a lot of the people listening to this podcast too are exactly what what we suggested in this next question, which is they're small to medium-sized businesses. What are some ways that you see a new technology should be approached for that kind of clientele?
This new technology, or just any new technology in general?
This new technology. I think the idea that you're taking the human error out of it and you're automating it in such a fashion that it just becomes easier, and then you're also doubling. You're going from the 50% rate of picking up the phone now, ideally 100%. Yeah.
I mean, so I think that's that's like, it depends on the kind of business that you have, of course. So. If you have a kind of receptionist pool, even you as a small business are answering the phone yourself, it turns out that unlike the home phone, which has obviously become obsolete, the business phone is still existing has not declined in terms of stores having business phones. It's still the lowest common denominator for how a customer can reach out to you. So business phones are actually not going away, because business is like, hey, I want to the customer to be able to contact me any way they want to, and there's still that phone, so I'm not going to give that up. So you have this phone, and right now it is such a analog device. You have to pick up the phone. You have to have someone like labor pick up the phone. They have to answer kind of questions. The information feedback back and forth is not captured. So you don't know, for example, if I'm starting a small business and I just hired somebody, they might be good, they might not be good. They pick up the phone when I'm not there. They're interacting with the customer. They're rude to the customer. That needs a negative Yelp review for a new business, but just catastrophic. Well, no, you take all of that kind of the potential negative of those situations, both from a cost and interaction perspective, out of it. So I think if you're a business and you're getting started, I would. And you're going to get a phone. You need a system that is there that is going to give your phone superpowers, and that means when you're not there, it's answering questions for you. When the customer wants a very, very kind of transactional, I want to order some food. I don't need to talk to anybody. I don't want to pretend to be nice and kind of have my brain worry about these kinds of things. I want to be able to process that very, very quickly. I want to pick up, I just you're not missing anything that's coming into your, any of your inbounds. It also also you to save labor. Maybe you don't need, a lot of our customers don't have anybody that picks up the phone ever. So I think it's just one of those things where, it's like all phones should come with this. I mean, it should really not even be a superpower. It should be a base feature set in today's world. I mean, we send 80 trillion messages, as humans. The only thing we do more than send messages is blink and breathe as humans. It's what we do.
Yeah, it's very lean startup. That we preach that book all day long, the lean startup, and I can't stress that enough. And the reason why it's so important to start up lean like that is number one, obviously you're starting from nothing, so you need to keep your overhead extremely low. But then when you point to periods that we're in now, where it's this COVID related stuff, and your business has shrunk again. That's how you survive. In longevity purposes. So. Maybe you transitioning into that. Maybe you could talk to us about some of the post-COVID pandemic trends that you're seeing in the industry, such as curbside commerce, and then text. You've already kind of talked about text or online ordering. So if you could elaborate a little bit more on some of these trends that maybe you're seeing people adapt with.
Yeah, and I can share some statistics from our existing customer base. So we've seen a few things. It was a natural thing for us to extend the product for curbside communication and commerce. So that's been for businesses that need that, for example, maybe a doctor's office isn't needed, but a retailer needs it, a restaurant needs it. And in fact, even what we've seen is a huge surge for spas and salons. So the curbside approach there is, we'll let you know when you can leave, maybe you're parked in the parking lot, stay in, we'll let you know when it's time for you to come in. So even that kind of a curbside for services industries is what we see is actually has become a very, very large category, which people aren't talking about. People just assume it's I go in, and the food gets brought to my car, but also waiting in your car to go in for a service, to get your nails done, or for a gym class or something. That's been another big area. So what we've seen, because obviously folks are unable to, in most cases, in non-essential businesses, walk into stores, is businesses are looking for ways to continue to interact and answer questions for people. And because I can't do it face to face, which is how I would do it in a typical retail scenario, I'm doing it in other ways. And so we've seen a 5x increase, a 500% increase in the number of transactions and messages of businesses. So, and a lot of businesses are kind of, sitting there, messaging with customers on a continuous basis. And that's how they're doing commerce right now, because their physical store, in many cases, doesn't have the utility of somebody somebody walking in and them interacting with them. So it's been replaced by this messaging approach.
It was great. I mean, those numbers are nothing to laugh at. 500% increases. That's huge, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why hopefully this recovery that we're seeing will be quicker. The tool set that we have now will hopefully allow it to be more V-shaped. I know it's now, depending how you look at it, some people are saying L, but it's certainly we're in a better position than we were in 2008 and 2009. Especially with the lockdown, it was kind of like the best of both worlds, where a lot of people were able to adapt really quickly. And then we're going to see these giant societal changes as a result too. A lot of people, fleeing the cities, moving to the suburbs, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Maybe one thing to kind of wrap this up. This has been great, by the way. I really appreciate you coming on and all of the insight. And hopefully people will take your product up seriously and get in touch with you guys, and you guys can be off to the races with that. So a question I ask everybody on this podcast kind of at the end is, knowing what you know now, and if you could travel back in time, what is one piece of advice you would give yourself before starting Numa?
Okay, so I think, in terms of in my business, I need to sell to small and medium-sized businesses. Okay, and it's a very different kind of a sale than selling into enterprises or into consumers. So I have 3 tranches of your potential customers. You can sell to consumers, you can sell to small medium business, and you can sell to enterprises. And I think that what I would probably do is look to focus on a couple of verticals, maybe even one vertical. Let's say just salons or just restaurants or just professional offices like lawyers, and nail that category first. We went very broad at the beginning, and we've got a lot of customers from many different verticals, but we see huge uptake in select verticals, and we're doubling down on them now. I'd love to, the advice I'd give myself is pick a vertical and focus on that, and rock that one first before you move on to the other ones.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think that applies for anybody. And basically, I think what you're describing is, if I'm trying to broaden this for the audience, because we have a lot of different kinds of businesses and business owners that listen to this show, and that is, find a niche that you can exploit and master it, and then learn what you can from that one, and then double it or triple it, and you just keep multiplying. And that's really the key to success, I think, in a lot of things that we do. This has been great. If people are interested in Numa, if they're interested in you, how can people get in touch with you? How can they get started with Numa?
Yeah, so Numa is very easy. So just go to numa.com. That's NUMA.com. You can interact with us there. And then you can find me at tr@numa.com is also the way to reach out to me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the show, and good luck with everything you guys are doing.
Great. Thanks, Lance.